When my sister leaned close at the altar and whispered, "Don't clap too loud," I felt every camera turn into a judge. I smiled, nodded, and decided to change only one thing. I would give this wedding nothing noisy. I would give it perfect silence. Before watching the video, please tell us in the comments from where you are watching this video. The rehearsal started with the coordinator's clipboard tapping like a slow metronome. I watched Lily trace the aisle with careful steps and anxious shoulders. Nolan tried to joke, but his eyes kept checking his mother's face. Deanna stood by the front row like a stage manager with trophies. She corrected the florist, then rearranged the ushers without asking anyone anything. Ruth, our mother, folded programs and murmured prayers under her breath. I stayed near the soundboard, pretending interest in cables and plugs. The sanctuary smelled like lemon polish and lilies that didn't need coaching. Trevor, the best man, tested the microphone and grinned a little too wide. "Can everyone hear me?" he asked, already writing jokes with his eyes. The coordinator reset the walk twice because Deanna wanted crisper timing. "Wider smile," she told Lily, as if joy required permits and approvals. Lily nodded, because she always nods when pushed in public. Nolan shrugged helplessly, then tugged his cuffs like a man facing weather. I moved closer and caught Lily's eyes long enough to lower her shoulders. "Breathe," I mouthed, and she shaped a thank you with one corner. Deanna shifted again, then instructed our cousins to clap with restraint. Trevor laughed and promised to judge applause on a 5-star scale. I filed that line under things that would not age well. During the run-through vows, Lily leaned toward me at the front pew. Her bouquet trembled, tiny tremors that cameras politely miss at distance. "Don't clap too loud," she whispered, trying to smile without shaking. I wanted to hug her, but I used words instead of hands. "I hear you," I said, steady and quiet enough to anchor. Deanna overheard and smiled like she'd won something invisible and important. Nolan kissed Lily's forehead and asked if everything felt okay now. She said yes, because saying no would detour the entire evening. The coordinator called for the recessional, and Trevor practiced a theatrical bow. We moved to the fellowship hall where coffee tried to sweeten nerves. Deanna surveyed the seating chart like a general reviewing topographic maps. She had placed the Whitakers by the kitchen door, next to stacked trays. Our side would rise for refills while her side owned the center. Ruth saw it, breathed once, and set her jaw with holy patience. "We can live anywhere for an hour," she said, calm and kind. Trevor rehearsed a toast that sounded like a podcast audition nobody requested. He teased Lily's college days and Nolan's romantic budgeting style, drawing scattered laughs. Deanna clapped, lightly, then asked him to keep it fun and photogenic. I checked the DJ list and found Deanna's edits marked in red. She had flagged our father-daughter song as too slow for momentum building. She had replaced it with something trendy that lasted exactly 2 minutes. The coordinator shrugged and said, "Client's mother has strong preferences tonight." I asked who signed the contract and learned Lily technically held the bill. "Then Lily decides," I said, keeping my voice soft but impossible to ignore. The coordinator nodded, grateful for someone choosing a lane without panic. Trevor rolled his eyes and whispered, "Audience needs a show, man." I smiled like a man measuring door frames for sturdier hinges. Outside, the evening air cooled the church steps and my temper. Nolan joined me and tried to explain his mother one more time. "She means well," he said, an apology he'd borrowed for years. "Meaning well is a weak alibi," I answered, still gentle, not cruel. He rubbed his temple and asked if I'd clap when they kissed. "I'll stand," I said, "and give you the only thing you need." He waited for the punchline that never arrived from my mouth. "Room to hear your own choices," I finished, letting silence underline meaning. Nolan nodded slowly, then promised he would steer harder tomorrow morning. Promises wobble without practice, but at least he named a direction. Back in the hall, Deanna corrected the coordinator about dismissal order again. She wanted her friends released to the buffet before our relatives. "Photography logistics," she claimed, as if dignity required alphabetical seating. Ruth approached, small but anchored, and asked for equal lanes. Deanna conceded 1 inch, then reclaimed 2 by moving our table numbers. I watched and counted the places where noise disguised control. Trevor tested another gag about X's and budget vows, now with gestures. I pictured every aunt wincing while cameras captured Lily's practiced smile. The laughter from Deanna's circle sounded rehearsed and slightly hungry for approval. Approval never fills a room, it only recycles air with perfume. When rehearsal wrapped, the coordinator thanked everyone and checked her watch. People drifted toward cars, carrying garment bags and leftover cookies. Lily hugged Ruth, then turned to me with a careful look. "Just get through tomorrow," she said, repeating a line taught by fear. I squeezed her hand and promised things would be simpler than advertised. She searched my face for answers I had no reason to broadcast. "Trust me," I said, which means more when you rarely overuse it. She exhaled and nodded like a swimmer touching the edge finally. Deanna called from the curb, reminding Lily to save tears for photos. Nolan opened the door and the night smelled like storm without thunder. In my car, I wrote the only plan that fit my principles. No scenes, no speeches, no performance designed to win a crowd. I would ask vendors to follow the contract and the bride's voice. I would remove applause where applause had replaced simple respect. Silence would not be punishment. Silence would be a mirror. When Trevor reached for the big laugh, it would not land loudly. When Deanna waited for choreographed praise, it would not arrive on command. Lily would choose music at her pace and volume, not anyone else's. I started the engine and let the quiet settle like good concrete. The next morning began with a venue walkthrough and a clipboard parade. I met the coordinator by the foyer where escort cards sat in rows. Deanna was already there, moving cards like chess pieces without rules. Our family names drifted toward the kitchen door again, neat but telling. I asked the coordinator who controlled final placement under the contract terms. "Bride-approved seating," she said, tapping the signature line marked "Client." Deanna smiled thinly and said, "We're optimizing flow for photos and speeches." I kept my voice calm and steady, like a level on fresh studs. "Then Lily approves it now," I said, leaving no room for fog. The coordinator nodded and texted Lily while Deanna measured silence with her eyes. Lily arrived in flats and a hoodie, hair-pinned with 2 clips. She looked around, then looked at me, trusting without asking for scripts. I pointed at the escort table and stepped back to give space. Deanna explained her plan using words like optics and runway to buffet. Lily listened and moved 3 cards back toward the center quietly. "Whitakers sit middle left," she said, voice small but finally decided. Deanna started to protest, then glanced at Nolan hovering near the doors. "Back your wife," I whispered, low enough to belong just to him. "Mom, we're keeping this seating," he said, eyes forward for once. Deanna pressed her lips, then nodded like someone tasting unfamiliar medicine slowly. We moved to the DJ booth where a small sign listed formal dances. Deanna had added "Mother-Son Encore" in neat handwriting that matched her emails. The DJ, a friendly guy from Parma, checked the signed playlist contract. "Bride controls selections, timing, and mic cues," he read, helpful and careful. Lily swallowed and pointed to the original schedule she preferred yesterday. "We keep this," she said. No tremble, no apology, just firm breath. Deanna tried a softer argument about guests needing momentum before toasts. I asked the DJ one question that closed every side door. "Whose voice directs you tonight?" He answered, "Bride's voice," and waited for Lily. "Then my voice says follow the original," she said, finally steady. Catering rolled carts through the foyer like a quiet, efficient parade. A server asked which family released to the buffet first at 6. Deanna opened her mouth, but Lily spoke before rank could reassert. "Release by rows, alternating sides, no VIP lane," she said. The server smiled, grateful for clear rules without performance attached. Deanna sighed and tried one more path that smelled like leftover power. "At least let my table start the champagne pour," she offered carefully. "Pours start with the head table only," the coordinator replied, professional and precise. I watched the room rebalance, inch by honest inch, toward fair. Trevor arrived with a garment bag and 3 jokes already loaded. He found the mic and asked the DJ to open the gain generously. The DJ looked at me, then at Lily, waiting for a client cue. "Keep normal levels," Lily said. "No spotlight on toasts, no hype track." Trevor laughed and tapped the mic like a late-night host finding rhythm. "Crowd's gonna need energy," he said, eyes scanning for easy approval. "Crowd needs respect," I answered. "Not mean, just exact and measured." Nolan backed her up, finally sounding like the groom instead of a son. "Short toasts, no roasts," he told Trevor. "Keep it kind and quick." The photographer asked about first looks and staged exits with sparklers. Deanna loved the sparklers because they photographed like victory parades. The venue manager shook his head and pointed at the posted fire code. "No sparklers inside," he said. and the city enforces fines quickly. Lily shrugged and smiled like someone given an unexpected gift. Then we leave through regular doors, she said, holding hands like grown-ups. Deanna tried to schedule a fake exit for friends who love drama. No pretend departures, Lily added. We want real hugs, not staged footage. The photographer nodded, grateful for limits that save time and dignity both. By noon, the seating chart was printed and placed behind acrylic. Ruth walked over, read it, and squeezed Lily's hand softly. This looks fair, she said, and fairness felt like oxygen returning. Deanna hovered nearby, watching reactions like a trader watches screens. I offered her coffee and a seat near the window with afternoon light. She accepted, which surprised everyone who knew her favorite weapon was motion. We still want a polished night, she said, voice gentler, less sharp. Polish is fine, I said, so long as nobody gets sanded down. She studied me, weighing whether to escalate or finally choose peace. We'll see, she murmured, but the edge blunted a little. I checked the program stack and found Trevor's name twice in bold. He had added a surprise interactive moment after cake and before dancing. I brought the programs to Lily and asked if she wanted that segment. She shook her head and crossed out the extra block without ceremony. No audience games, she said. We're not running a pep rally. Trevor protested that tradition demanded laughter between slices and slow songs. Tradition demands kindness, Ruth said, startling him with soft authority. He blinked, then joked weaker, humor losing fuel, without a captive audience. Make your toast respectful and sit, I added, firm but not unkind. He rolled his eyes, then nodded like a student warned but still invited. Before we left, I gathered vendors for a 2-minute huddle near the stage. Tonight is simple, I said, keeping it clear and short for everyone. Follow bride instructions, keep mics at normal volume, and avoid applause prompts. The DJ raised a thumb. The coordinator marked it on her rundown sheet. The caterer confirmed staggered release and no VIP tables jumping the line. The photographer thanked us for protecting moments instead of chasing viral clips. Deanna watched the huddle, then took Nolan aside and whispered fast. He listened, then faced her with a line I had hoped to hear. We're doing Lily's night, he said. Not a program for bragging. The room held, and the plan settled into place like good flooring. We walked out under a sky that promised mild weather and even light. Lily hugged Ruth, then hugged me longer than usual, breathing real. Thank you for drawing lines without yelling, she said, eyes finally calm. Lines don't need volume, I answered. They need owners. Deanna approached, thoughtful, feeling the texture of a day not built for her. I'll keep my remarks brief, she said, almost smiling at the new rules. Brief and kind, I replied, offering the last boundary kindly and firmly. Nolan took Lily's hand, and they left to rest before vows. I stayed behind with the coordinator to confirm 3 final cues. Silence, when chosen well, makes even busy rooms learn better manners. The welcome dinner looked like a magazine spread with borrowed warmth. String lights crossed the patio, trying to nail charm into rented space. Deanna greeted guests one step inside, dispensing air kisses and agendas. Place cards herded the Whitakers to a corner near the swinging kitchen door. Ruth smiled anyway, setting her purse where trays nearly brushed elbows. Nolan stood at center like careful furniture, worried about scuff marks. Lily pressed napkin corners flat, calm on the surface but tightening underneath. I scanned the room and counted microphones, doors, and who controlled each cue. Trevor grabbed the mic before salads reached tables, fishing for laughs immediately. Tonight's about love and logistics, he started, selling jokes nobody ordered. He teased Nolan's coupon courtship, pulling scattered laughs from Deanna's side. He called Lily the boss on a budget, then winked toward Deanna. Don't worry, we'll upgrade her, he added, earning louder laughter. Lily's smile froze like a posture corrected by an old piano teacher. Deanna clapped delicately, then glanced across the patio to measure our faces. I sipped water and learned exactly where the room burned fuel. Servers released tables by Deanna's hand signals instead of the coordinator's list. Her friends went first, then second, then somehow third again by dessert. Our corner waded through thinning trays and compliments that smelled like charity. Ruth thanked a server and split rolls without making a scene. Food tastes better when gratitude goes first, she murmured to me. A cousin near the speakers winced every time bass rattled glass. I asked the DJ for small volume trims between songs, purely for clarity. He obliged, reading my tone as problem prevention rather than challenge. Deanna staged a family spotlight that skipped our side entirely. She walked the room announcing Pierce grandparents, cousins, and lifelong mentors. When Ruth stood to wave politely, Deanna redirected attention to floral arrangements. Cameras followed her index finger like trained birds in a tidy cage. Nolan hovered behind her and mouthed, "Sorry," toward Lily from 3 steps. Lily squeezed his hand and nodded, choosing calm over a messy rescue. I clocked 3 guests cringing in slow motion but clapping on schedule. Applause told the truth anyway. It sounded purchased, not earned. Trevor returned with a toast shaped like a roast, wearing borrowed manners. He retold Lily's college job at the thrift store as a punchline. "She can stretch $1 until Washington complains," he bragged. Deanna laughed loudly, covering a few uneasy glances near us. Nolan tried intervening but stalled halfway to the mic like a stalled engine. Ruth bowed her head, praying with eyes open and posture steady. I caught the coordinator's gaze and raised 2 fingers, requesting brevity. She nodded, cut the music bed, and signaled Trevor toward rapping lines. Between clinks, Deanna tested another tactic dressed like decorum. She requested practice applause for the mother-son dance intro tomorrow. She explained timing rules, then demonstrated clapping at half volume for elegance. Guests complied, confused but eager to avoid being the loud one. Our corner followed with polite taps that sounded human, not stagey. Deanna surveyed the room and adjusted her ring like a victory bell. Lily's shoulders dipped, then squared, as if deciding which muscles mattered. I placed my napkin down and wrote 1 sentence in my head: remove applause. Dessert came with speeches limited to approved voices listed on Deanna's card. She skipped Ruth, citing time constraints, while granting Trevor another segment. Trevor pitched a crowd game involving relationship trivia meant to embarrass gently. The coordinator stalled by checking permits and vendor timing sheets. I asked Nolan quietly if he wanted the game to run. "No," he whispered, like oxygen finally striking a match. I walked to the coordinator and said the contract allowed bride vetoes. She nodded and dissolved the game with logistics too boring to challenge. As plates cleared, Deanna approached our corner carrying a polite weapon. "We'll keep sentiment short tomorrow," she said, feigning kindness. "It photographs better?" Ruth answered with a sentence that landed softly but held steel. "Love photographs fine without trimming its voice," she said evenly. Deanna blinked, then pivoted toward her table's admiration. Nolan stayed. That counted more than applause ever could tonight. Lily reached for my hand beneath the cloth and squeezed once. "Thank you for not making a scene," she whispered, calm but tired. On the way out, Trevor clapped my shoulder, still hunting approval. "Crowd needs energy tomorrow," he said, smiling engineered smiles. "They'll get clarity," I answered, steady as a plumb line. Deanna overheard and offered a smile that measured, not welcomed. "We trust you'll keep things tasteful," she said, assigning me a role. "I'll keep them honest," I replied, which earned a flicker of something. Outside, the night smelled like rain considering its options. I listed the tools available: contracts, cues, vendor loyalties, and my silence. Back home, I replayed each insult only long enough to sort parts. Deanna needed applause like fuel. Trevor needed laughter like oxygen. The room followed microphones, not feelings. The schedule bowed to signatures. Lily needed a ceremony where love didn't compete with ratings. Ruth needed a reception not measured by where trays paused longest. Nolan needed practice choosing his wife over choreography. I needed only one strategy sharp enough to cut without noise. Tomorrow, when they cued clapping, I would cue nothing and let truth arrive unamplified. I built the plan on 3 tools: contracts, cues, and witnesses. Contracts said Lily's voice controlled music, mics, and the program order. Cues would steer vendors toward calm rather than hype or applause. Witnesses would be placed where truth could be seen clearly. I wrote nothing down because paper invites sabotage in hungry rooms. Instead, I rehearsed sentences that fit inside 10 honest seconds. Each sentence made a door the room could walk through. My goal wasn't humiliation. My goal was frictionless boundaries. Deanna could posture without microphones obeying her appetite. Trevor could fish for laughs without the soundboard helping the bait. I met the coordinator first because schedules decide who wins quietly. "We'll run the signed program without off-list segments," I said calmly. She checked her clipboard and tapped the client line under Lily's signature. "Bride commands sequence and speaking order," she repeated, grounded and professional. "No open mic," I added, "and no audience games sneaking back." She nodded and drew a small box labeled silence after toasts. Servers pause bussing during silence, I said, so the room actually hears it. We aligned 3 hand signals: hold, resume, and cut music. She smiled, liking that order could protect people without starting fights. The DJ joined us by the booth, already reading our faces. No hype tracks under speeches, I said. No drum rolls. No swell. He adjusted a fader and waited for the rest of my rules. Keep mics at conversation volume. Duck channels 5 seconds after last word. He asked what to do if someone grabs a mic mid-program. Confirm bride's approval or fade them politely, I said, not theatrical. If her approval isn't clear, redirect to coordinator, I added evenly. He wrote bride voice only on a sticky note and stuck it center. Clapping prompts off, I finished. No let's hear it fillers. He lifted his hand, and I matched it with quiet gratitude. I found the photographer near the balcony working angles with quick, careful eyes. No staged applause shots, I said. No prompts that drag reactions out. She laughed and said she prefers candids that don't smell like performance. If someone tries a fake exit, I added, shoot the refusal. She raised her eyebrows, then nodded like she respected clean boundaries. I'll position near the mic during toasts, she offered. Catch faces when the room learns new rules. Especially Trevor and Deanna, I said, honest but not gleeful. She understood the assignment without needing anyone ugly. Pictures would record choices, not choreography disguised as affection. Next, I placed witnesses where Spinning would struggle to breathe. Ruth would sit center left with 2 aunts who noticed tiny cruelties. 2 cousins with soft voices but steel spines would flank the aisle. Nolan's uncle, the only Pierce who values fairness, got a front row end. He'd see hands reaching for mics that weren't theirs tonight. I asked ushers to keep doors closed during speeches so silence holds. If someone insists on re-entry, I said, guide after toasts, finish. Doors create pressure. Pressure makes people hear themselves better. I wasn't starving applause. I was feeding attention something more nutritious. Rooms behave when exits briefly cost patience. I kept legal and logistics trimmed to 1 clean paragraph for Lily. Your contract gives you control over mics, music, and order, I said. We'll respect ADA access, fire code, and vendor timelines without games. Short toasts, then a full minute with no sound, I continued. Servers pause, band waits, DJ ducks, and doors stay closed. It will feel strange, I warned, but the quiet teaches faster. She breathed once, then twice, and the tremor left her shoulders. Will it embarrass them? She asked, careful with the pronoun. No, I said. It will reveal priorities in a fair light. She nodded, ready to let silence do adult work. Finally, I rehearsed interventions built for kindness, not spectacle. If Trevor drifted into roast territory, the DJ would duck him gently. The coordinator would cross the stage and request, "Wrapped for schedule integrity." If Deanna launched a bonus monologue, the mic would cool respectfully. The DJ would say, "Will return after the couple's remarks," and hold. Then Ethan would speak, because silence demands leadership from the right mouth. 30 seconds, I told him later, about choosing your wife in public. He swallowed, then said, I can do 30 seconds. Ruth would bless the meal in exactly 20 honest seconds, and nobody would clap unless the room honestly wanted to. I met the DJ 1 hour before guests arrived and walked cues. He tested a slow fade, and I asked for a 5-second duck. No applause prompts, I said, tapping the laminated set list once. He nodded and taped a sticky note that read, Bride voice only. We rehearsed the toast order and the silence after the last word. Servers freeze, I said. Band waits. Doors closed until I signal. He repeated it back, like a pilot reading a checklist before takeoff. I thanked him because respect oils gears better than fear ever could. He lowered the subwoofers 2 ticks to keep glass from rattling. The room already felt calmer, like a pool without kids cannonballing. The coordinator arrived with a headset and the posture of a traffic cop. We walked the floor together, counting strides between stations and doors. Your hold signal is palm up, she said. Resume is a circle. I asked for a clean lane around the head table during toasts. She moved 1 table 6 inches and saved 20 seconds of chaos later. Staging matters because calm looks intentional, I said, keeping tone even. She placed a staffer by each side door with a simple script. We'll reopen after toasts, they would say, smiling without challenge. 2 minutes tops, she promised, logging it on her rundown. The plan could now survive a small storm without broken glass. Catering rolled in racks like quiet trains and asked about pacing. Release by alternating rows, I said, not by family or status. The captain liked that because lines stop fighting when rules feel fair. We agreed on a water sweep before toast, so nobody clanked mid-sentence. He assigned 2 servers to the aisle edges during silence. They'll stillness check plates and freeze if anyone speaks, he said. I asked for champagne at seats before microphones touched hands. No toasts while staff pours, I added. That noise breeds spills. He made a quick note and smiled at the simplicity. Kitchens appreciate plans that save sleeves and tempers. The photographer tested angles while I measured where faces would turn. No staged applause shots, I reminded. Catch honest reactions, not coached ones. She pointed to a spot near the DJ where she could see Deanna. That corner holds her best angles and her tells, she said. We practiced a hand sign for stay on the speaker's face. If Trevor reached for roast humor, she'd capture the wince, not the setup. Truth lives on listeners, not performers, I said, keeping it simple. She grinned because candids reward patience, not pushy prompts. We synced our clocks because timing creates stories that hold. 10 minutes of prep would save 100 edits later. I placed witnesses where the room could learn quickly without a lecture. Ruth sat center left with 2 aunts who tracked small disrespect. Nolan's uncle took the aisle end, a man who values fairness over theater. I asked ushers to route late arrivals to the back during toasts. Doors rest locked for 1 minute after the last line, I said. They nodded, relieved to work a plan instead of improv. I briefed Ethan quietly on his 30 seconds after silence. Say you choose Lily in public and keep it clean. He practiced once, then twice, until the words lost tremble. Ruth rehearsed her blessing to 20 seconds, strong and calm. She smiled like a teacher who trusts the bell will ring on time. Deanna arrived early, scanning tables the way traders scan screens. She asked the DJ about her mother-son encore. Voice, sugar over iron. He glanced at me, then pointed to the signed program. We follow the bride, he said, professional, neutral, and complete. She walked to the coordinator and floated a tiny change to release order. The coordinator tapped the laminated plan and didn't flinch. Alternating rows. No VIP lanes, she said, kind and final. Deanna adjusted a napkin and weighed escalation she couldn't win. Then I'll keep remarks brief, she said, wearing a small, guarded smile. Brief can still be sharp. We would manage the mic, not her mood. Trevor showed up last, buzzing with crowd energy and new bits. He asked the DJ to juice the mic and throw a hype bed. The DJ skimmed the sticky note and kept levels at conversation volume. Short toasts, no roasts, I reminded. Steady eyes and level voice. I know funny, he said, bouncing on his heels like a spring. No kind, I answered, and keep the room safe for the bride. He shrugged and said he'd read the audience in real time. Read the contract first, I said, pointing at bride voice only. He rolled his eyes but stopped pushing the fader. Boundaries make jokes grow up or go home. 30 minutes before guests, we ran the final cue stack. Coordinator tested hold. Staff froze. DJ ducked. Doors paused clean. We practiced the silence in a room without witnesses. It felt long, like a hallway without pictures, and perfect. This will reveal priorities, I said, not smiling, just certain. The coordinator exhaled and said she wished more families chose restraint. I checked the clock and texted Lily one simple line. Your voice leads, the room will follow. She replied with a heart and the word ready. A plan doesn't need applause, it needs owners and a clock. The church filled slowly, like a jar under a steady faucet. Guest fan programs printed in pale blue ink that Deanna had approved but not designed. The air held a polite mix of perfume, floor polish, and nerves. I stood near the side doors, counting beats between the prelude songs and Lily's entrance cue. The coordinator nodded once from the balcony, confirming that our signals matched. Ruth sat center left, posture perfect, expression calm. Deanna floated near the first pew, rehearsing her smile for photographers who hadn't yet lifted their cameras. Nolan fidgeted at the altar, twisting his cufflink like a coin that refused to land. When the organist began, the hush was soft and cooperative. Bridesmaids walked on cue, steps neat and symmetrical. Trevor held the ring box like a prop he might joke with later. The usher closed the doors gently, sealing in the light from the stained glass windows. Then the music changed, and Lily appeared, steady, graceful, eyes forward. Her hand brushed Ruth's shoulder before she took the aisle alone. Guests leaned to see her, not to perform admiration, but to witness something unguarded. For the first time all weekend, Deanna stayed still. Nolan's face softened into genuine awe. No choreography needed. At the halfway mark, Lily glanced toward me and caught my nod. She didn't need rescue, she needed room to walk in peace. The photographer followed from the aisle's edge, steps quieter than breath. I counted 7 seconds between her stop at the altar and the organ's fade. The silence after the final note held perfectly. No coughs, no whispers, no premature clapping. Even Deanna hesitated, waiting for someone else to start approval. Nobody did. The pause turned real, reverent instead of awkward. I felt the plan click into place without a sound. The vows ran clean, trimmed to plain language without any theatrical inflection. Nolan's voice trembled once, then found rhythm. Lily's stayed calm, her tone exactly how she'd practiced. Soft, but certain. When the officiant asked for rings, Trevor nearly dropped his cue, caught it, and whispered a joke under his breath. It landed nowhere. The microphone stayed at conversation volume, the laughter too faint to carry. Deanna blinked, registering that the crowd's reaction wasn't feeding anyone's spotlight. That was the moment silence started its work. Real emotions replaced rehearsal energy. "By the authority vested in me," the officiant said, his cadence like polished wood. The kiss drew quiet smiles but no applause. Cameras clicked, mechanical, honest sounds that recorded rather than performed. Deanna looked around, waiting for claps that never came. Her hands hovered, then lowered gracefully as though that was always the plan. The lack of sound didn't feel empty, it felt respectful, the kind of quiet that asks people to mean what they feel. I caught the coordinator's eye, and she gave me a subtle nod of approval. A good ceremony breathes between notes, not inside noise. The recessional music started low, and rose carefully, matching human pace instead of movie tempo. Guests began to follow the couple out in rows, not in swarms. Deanna whispered to the photographer, asking for another angle, but the woman only pointed toward the exit where Lily and Nolan waited. "Natural light's better out there," she said, ending the discussion without friction. Ruth stayed seated until the aisle cleared, folding her program neatly. I joined her, helping her stand. "Smooth," she whispered. "Mathematically so," I replied, because timing solves chaos better than emotion. Outside, sun spilled over the church steps like reward. Lily hugged Ruth first, then turned to me with eyes that finally rested. "They didn't clap," she said, half laughing, half disbelieving. "They listened," I corrected. "That's rarer." Nolan joined, looking like someone who had survived both pressure and revelation. "That quiet hit harder than any cheer," he said. Deanna approached, smile measured, voice pitched for control. "Lovely ceremony," she said. Understated. I thanked her and let the adjective hang where it belonged. She opened her mouth to add something but stopped. The pause told me she understood the rule now. Speak when there's value, not volume. Guests formed clusters for photos, but nobody shouted directions. The photographer worked efficiently, using gestures instead of yelling. Trevor fidgeted with his tie, restless without background noise to surf on. "Crowd feels sleepy," he muttered. "Crowd feels peace," I answered, helping the florist gather fallen petals. Deanna started to instruct the group about poses, then stepped back mid-sentence. For once, she watched rather than managed. Silence had rearranged the pecking order without announcing it. When the car finally rolled away with Lily and Nolan waving from the window, applause returned. Small, real, unprompted. People clapped because they wanted to, not because a DJ told them to. Ruth exhaled, hand over heart, saying softly, "That's how blessings sound." I walked behind the last guest to ensure no one left behind their dignity. Inside, the coordinator closed her clipboard and said, "Best ceremony I've run all year." I told her we just practiced respect in real time. She smiled and said, "Respect photographs well." The next test waited at the reception, where microphones would either obey contracts or collapse into chaos. I checked my watch. The silence had held perfectly for 43 minutes. Now it was time to see if it could survive champagne. The reception began under warm lights, strung like steady constellations. The band tuned quietly, keeping sound below conversation level. Guests found their seats according to the chart Lily approved. I watched as the alternating release plan worked. Nobody jockeyed for better spots. Ruth sat with our side near the center, equal, not forgotten. Deanna floated around the tables, greeting guests with the precision of a campaign handshake. She scanned the head table, probably counting when her own moment might arrive. Trevor flexed his fingers, rehearsing his big energy. I made sure the DJ's sticky note, bride voice only, still sat square on the console. Dinner service flowed like choreography done right. The caterers moved in quiet lines, avoiding clangs or chatter. Lily's laugh, real this time, cut through softly. Nolan poured her water, small proof that gestures can be vows. When plates cleared, the coordinator signaled me from the back corner. It was time. The DJ dropped music to a whisper and spoke into the mic gently. Ladies and gentlemen, the bride and groom would like to invite a few short words. That phrase was key. Invite, not present. The first to stand was Ruth, not because she demanded it, but because Lily nodded toward her. Ruth's words lasted maybe 20 seconds. Love is service you repeat without keeping score, she said, voice low but crisp. May they outgive each other daily. She smiled, placed her hand on Lily's shoulder, and sat. No applause, just the soft sound of people breathing. The quiet wasn't awkward, it was reverent. Deanna looked around, confused at the absence of her expected cue. She pressed her hands together, but nobody followed. The DJ watched me for a signal. I nodded once. Hold the silence. He did. The room stayed suspended, respectful and still. That minute alone was worth every plan. Next came Trevor, clearing his throat like he owned the hour. All right, folks, he started. Time for something lighter. He waited for laughter that didn't come. The mic stayed flat, volume steady but unboosted. He launched into a joke about Nolan's old car breaking down on their first date. A few polite chuckles came, more sympathy than amusement. Then he drifted toward Lily's thrift store years again. She's so thrifty she made him propose with a discount ring. He laughed at himself. Silence answered back, patient and cold. The DJ gave me a quick look. I made the cut sign. The coordinator approached, touching Trevor's elbow like a flight attendant asking a passenger to sit. Thank you, she said sweetly, taking the mic for schedule timing. The crowd exhaled, relieved. The lesson landed without cruelty, just stillness. Deanna stood next, claiming her minute. As Nolan's mother, she began, I've dreamed of this day since he was a boy. Her tone wavered between genuine and rehearsed. She spoke about heritage, success, and how we set high standards because we love deeply. The photographer caught Lily's steady face, no emotion wasted. Deanna paused for applause that didn't come. She smiled wider, confused, and tried again. Let's give them a hand. The DJ faded her mic half a second before the prompt landed. The crowd stayed calm. She laughed softly, adjusting earrings, pretending it was intentional. Thank you all, she finished, stepping away. No one cheered. Only Nolan reached out and touched her shoulder, quiet mercy disguised as etiquette. Then it was Ethan's turn. He stood, paper folded once, eyes level. Marriage isn't applause, he said plainly. It's maintenance. You check the structure, you fix what creaks, and you show up when the noise dies down. He looked at Lily and Nolan, then added, if you can sit together in silence and still feel seen, you've already won. The DJ let the last word hang untouched. Nobody moved for 10 seconds, maybe more. Then one clap, Ruth, another, small but honest. The rest followed naturally, unprompted. The sound grew, not loud but real. Applause born of emotion, not cue. Lily smiled through tears that looked earned, not arranged. Deanna dabbed her eyes with a napkin, maybe from reflection, maybe from something harder to name. Trevor sank lower in his chair, humbled, but not humiliated. The coordinator whispered to staff. Servers resumed quietly. The DJ rolled gentle instrumental music. No lyrics, no bass, just air. Guests began conversations about memories, not mistakes. Ruth leaned toward me and said, that silence preached louder than any sermon. I nodded because truth had done its job. Every performer in the room had learned what an honest crowd feels like. After the toasts, Deanna approached the DJ booth. Lovely tone tonight, she said, eyes scanning the console. I expected more energy, but it worked. She looked at me and added, it's odd. People actually listened. They finally heard, I corrected, polite but clear. She considered it, then laughed quietly. You Whitakers and your restraint, she said. It's unnerving. It's reliable, I replied, ending the sentence and the debate. She walked off, unsure whether to feel slighted or relieved. Later, as the band took over, laughter returned naturally. Lily and Nolan danced, moving with the calm of people who'd survived a storm without thunder. The guests followed, slower at first, then comfortable. Ruth clapped once, off-beat, not caring. For the first time all night, applause felt deserved. I stood at the back, watching the rhythm of real joy take shape. No mics, no spotlights, no scripts, just breath and motion. Silence had done its job. The room finally learned that dignity dances better than noise ever could. Deanna hovered near the stage after the toasts, pretending to straighten table flowers. The DJ had begun a light playlist, and the crowd had slipped into soft conversation. I watched her fingers drum against a glass, rhythm too deliberate to be casual. She was waiting for her window, the part where the mother of the groom took center stage to reclaim narrative. The coordinator caught my eye from across the room. We both knew it was coming. "Hold for cue," I mouthed. She nodded once and positioned near the audio board. Deanna turned toward Nolan and said something quiet, then moved toward the mic stand. Nolan froze, half a smile on his face, unsure whether to intervene. "Just 1 minute," she said aloud, smiling at the room. "I promise it's worth it." The DJ looked at me and I gave the flat hand signal. Hold. The volume stayed low. No spotlight, no intro. Deanna tapped the mic once, expecting the hollow pop of authority. It didn't come. The mic was live but quiet, its range capped for conversation level. "Can everyone hear me?" she asked, squinting toward the back. A few guests nodded, others didn't bother. She began with a nervous laugh. "What a beautiful day, right? As Nolan's mother, I just wanted to say..." The DJ glanced at me, and I lifted 2 fingers, cut at 30. He timed it perfectly. Her voice softened halfway through a sentence, tapering into air. She tapped again, frowning at the console. "Oh, that's fine," she said, forcing humor. "You get the point." She stepped away, smiling for cameras that weren't aimed at her. Trevor clapped once, hoping to spark applause. It fizzled. The mic had gone cold, and the room understood what that meant, even if no one said it. Nolan reached for her hand, whispering something only she heard. Her shoulders dropped and she nodded. Deflated, not defeated. The coordinator approached, microphone in hand, and said gently, "We'll continue with the couple's first dance." The band took cue and filled the space with soft rhythm. It was the perfect transfer of attention. Clean, unforced, complete. Lily and Nolan stepped forward. The spotlight, which Deanna had requested for herself weeks ago, now lit her son and daughter-in-law only. Silence had reshaped the hierarchy. As they danced, the guests watched, still processing the scene. Trevor leaned toward me at the back. "You really planned that?" he whispered. I didn't answer, just nodded toward the floor. "That's brutal," he said. "It's balanced," I corrected. "Nobody got hurt. They just got seen." He laughed once, quietly, then sank back into his chair. When the song ended, applause erupted. Real, generous, not cued. Deanna clapped too, though her smile looked like she was still deciding whether it was safe to join. The coordinator signaled for the cake cutting. Everything ran on schedule now, each piece falling into place without push or ego. Guests lined up for photos, the photographer guiding smoothly, no raised voices. Ruth joined Deanna near the dessert table, offering her a plate. "You raised a good man," she said simply. Deanna blinked, unsure if it was peace or pity. "So did you," she replied after a pause. It was the first honest sentence between them all weekend. As guests drifted toward the bar, I saw the DJ remove the sticky note and hand it to me. "Worked like magic," he said. "That was the quietest control I've ever seen." "Good," I replied. "Control should be invisible." He laughed and said he'd use that line someday. I told him to give credit to the bride. Across the room, Lily laughed at something Nolan whispered. Her posture relaxed for the first time all night. Later, when most of the crowd had shifted to the patio, Deanna approached me. She held her drink carefully, eyes clearer now. "You set that up," she said. It wasn't a question. "I enforced contracts," I said. "You still got your minute." She considered that, then looked toward Lily. It sounded smaller than I imagined. "It sounded right-sized," I said. "Sometimes small is honest." She didn't argue. Instead, she sighed and said, "Maybe I deserve that." "Deserve isn't the word," I replied. "It's just proportion." Before leaving, she touched my arm lightly. "You love her fiercely," she said. I underestimated that. "A brother's job is to protect peace, not just family," I said. Deanna nodded once, then crossed the floor to hug Lily without pretense. Cameras caught it, but for once, she didn't pose. Trevor whistled low. "Man," he said, "you didn't need fireworks after all." "Fireworks burn out," I answered. "Quiet lasts." The mic sat on its stand, red light blinking but no sound. It was done. No one would remember her speech. They'd remember the pause. That's the trick about silence. It rewrites memory cleaner than any speech ever could. Morning sunlight came through the blinds like measured forgiveness. The reception hangover was emotional, not physical. Ruth made coffee in the hotel kitchenette while I scrolled through photos the photographer sent overnight. The pictures told the story better than words ever could. No tension, no performance, just human faces after a long silence. Lily's laugh looked real. Nolan's eyes held relief. Deanna appeared in a few shots. Smaller somehow, not because of distance, but because she finally fit into scale. It looks peaceful, Ruth said, handing me a mug. It is, I answered. The room finally learned how to breathe. Downstairs, guests gathered for breakfast like campers after a storm. Trevor sat with his head low over scrambled eggs. When I passed, he glanced up and said, "Guess I wasn't as funny as I thought." "You were honest enough to notice," I replied, setting a tone for mercy. He nodded and said, "I owe Lily an apology." "Then give it in daylight, not on stage," I said. Later, he did just that. I watched him approach her table, remove his sunglasses, and speak with visible sincerity. She smiled and said, "I know you meant well." He left lighter, as though absolution has weight until spoken. Deanna arrived last, still polished but quiet. She carried her coffee like a peace offering. "Morning, Aaron," she said, using my name properly for the first time. "Morning," I answered. She sat across from Ruth and waited for an opening. "I watched the videos," she said finally. That silence. It made me look at myself. Ruth nodded but didn't rescue her from reflection. "Sometimes reflection's the only mirror that tells the truth," Ruth said. Deanna stirred sugar slowly, then admitted, "I wanted that day to prove something about us. I think it just exposed what I was afraid of losing." "Control?" I asked. She met my eyes and nodded. "And reputation," she added. Nolan joined us, holding Lily's hand as if still practicing what he learned. "Mom," he said, "we're good. Really." Deanna looked at him, eyes wet but steady. "I know," she said. "You two did fine without my stage management." Lily smiled and said, "We just wanted it to feel like love, not a commercial." Deanna exhaled like someone lowering a heavy box she shouldn't have lifted alone. "You got that right," she said. The table relaxed, coffee cups clinking softly, spoons like punctuation. Even Trevor, 2 tables away, looked calmer. Quiet had spread like truth in room temperature air, slow but thorough. Later that morning, I walked with Lily through the hotel garden. She carried her heels, enjoying the cool path under bare feet. "You saved my wedding," she said, smiling without weight. "You saved your own," I corrected. "I just turned down the volume." She laughed. It was strange at first, hearing silence after every big line. "That's where meaning lives," I said. "In the gaps." She nodded thoughtfully. "Deanna called me last night," she added. "She said she's embarrassed but grateful." I asked if that surprised her. "A little," she said, "but people change when they run out of applause." At checkout, the coordinator found me near the desk. "Your family handled yesterday with class," she said. "Most weddings end in arguments, not relief." I thanked her and asked how many cues we missed. "0, she said, smiling. "You ran it like an orchestra." "It was more like carpentry," I replied. "Measure twice, cut once, and sand down quietly." She laughed and said she might quote that at her next event. I told her to charge extra for silence. It's rarer than gold leaf. By afternoon, cars rolled out toward airports and suburbs. Ruth hugged Deanna at the curb, and it wasn't staged this time. "You did well," Ruth said simply. "You too," Deanna replied, voice soft and real. They smiled like 2 mothers who finally understood the difference between pride and love. Trevor waved from his car and shouted, "Next time, I'll keep it PG." Everyone laughed, including Deanna. Even that small sound felt earned now. Driving home, the world looked cleaner. Lily texted a photo of her and Nolan on the porch swing at their hotel suite. Bare feet, cake forks, smiles. "Thanks for everything." Silence was perfect. I smiled and typed back, "It usually is." At a red light, Ruth said, "You think Deanna learned something permanent?" "I think we all did," I answered. "Noise hides cracks. Quiet shows the structure." She nodded and looked out the window at passing farm fields. "Then I guess you built something strong." "We all did," I said, "even her." The rest of the drive stayed, and peaceful. No victory speeches, no analysis, no replay, just road hum, sunlight, and the kind of silence that feels full instead of empty, the kind that doesn't need to prove anything anymore. A week later, the wedding faded into digital memory. Photos posted, videos trimmed, captions polished for public peace. Still, the story lived louder in people's minds than online. Every guest remembered the silence more than the flowers. The Whitakers and Pierces had shared a table, a stage, and a reckoning. But the real work of peace doesn't happen at the event. It begins afterward, when the noise dies and reflection has space. I called it the aftermath ledger. Every decision tallied, every behavior balanced. The first entry came from Trevor. He texted 3 days later, "I owe your sister another apology." He sent a gift card to a local shelter in her name instead of flowers. "For every bad joke, one good act," he wrote. Lily laughed when she read it and said, "That's growth." I replied, "Humor works better when it learns humility." Trevor later posted a photo helping rebuild a playground. Redemption sometimes starts with paint rollers. Deanna's ledger entry arrived slower. She called Ruth on Friday evening. "I've been replaying that reception," she said. "I finally understand what you meant about trimming voices." Ruth listened without scolding, just quiet space. "Love doesn't need editing," she said. "It needs honesty." Deanna sighed. "I think I confuse love with control." "We all have," Ruth answered. "You just had a louder microphone." Deanna laughed softly, admitting the irony. Then she said she wanted to take Lily and Nolan to dinner. No speeches, no cameras. Ruth agreed, but only if the invitation came from love, not apology. It did. When they met the next week, Nolan sent me a message. Dinner was quiet. Mom just listened. No corrections. I read it twice, smiling. Silence wasn't just a one-time stunt anymore. It had turned into a language everyone understood. Deanna told Lily afterward, "I almost didn't recognize myself that night." "Maybe that's good," Lily said. "You met the version that doesn't need applause." That line would later become one of Lily's favorite phrases. She printed it and framed it in her living room. "Don't need applause to mean it." Ruth and I cleaned out the leftover decor stored in my garage. She labeled boxes for donation. "You handled that wedding like a surgeon," she said. "No mess, just precision." "I just read the room," I replied. "People tell you who they are if you turn down the volume. Maybe that's why you never raised your voice even when you should have," she said. I smiled. "Noise hides cracks. Quiet shows the structure." She nodded and wrote that quote on one of the donation boxes before we dropped it at the thrift store. A few weeks later, Nolan called to tell me he and Lily were planning a small thank you dinner for family. No band, no script, just a home-cooked meal. When we arrived, Deanna opened the door herself, apron dusted with flour. "No catering," she said. "I figured I owed the kitchen some time." Ruth hugged her without hesitation. Over dinner, Nolan toasted with water instead of wine. "To family," he said, "for teaching me that applause doesn't fix anything. Actions do." Everyone clinked glasses softly. Even Trevor raised his, grinning like he finally understood timing. When dessert came, Lily brought out a notebook. "Aaron," she said, "we wrote you something." She opened to a page covered in small handwriting. "It's a list of what we learned from the silence." She read them aloud. "Patience speaks louder than pride. Listening can sound like love. Control is the cheapest form of fear. Respect is the quietest revenge." The room went still again. Not heavy, just full. Deanna wiped a tear. "That last one," she said, "that's yours." "Ours," I corrected. Everyone paid into that lesson. Afterward, Nolan walked me out to the driveway. "You think people change for good?" he asked. "Only if the mirror stays up," I said. "Silence is that mirror. Don't take it down." He nodded, hands steady on the hood of his car. "You know," he said, "I used to think weddings were performances, but I think the real marriage started when the mic died." I laughed. "That's when the sound check ended," I said. "Now the music can start." Back home, I wrote the last line of the ledger on a scrap of paper. "Respect built in quiet lasts longer than love shouted across rooms." I folded it into my wallet, a reminder not of victory, but balance. That wedding began as a power struggle and ended as a civics lesson in empathy. Nobody lost face because silence doesn't humiliate. It equalizes. It puts everyone at the same volume, human. If you found this story meaningful, don't forget to like the video and tell me what you think in the comments. And of course, subscribe for more stories like this one, where quiet speaks louder than revenge ever could. A year later, the wedding had become family shorthand. Someone would say, "Don't make it another reception," and everyone knew what that meant. No grandstanding, no noise, no audience required. What used to be a weekend of nerves and power plays had turned into a measuring stick for peace. Nolan and Lily lived in a small 2-story on Sycamore Street. the kind of house that hums gently when you walk through it. A dog waited by the front window each evening, and the porch light stayed on because love, when done right, keeps the path lit without motion sensors. They invited Ruth and me for dinner to mark the first anniversary. Nothing fancy, Lily said on the phone. Just family, food, and quiet. That last word carried more warmth than decoration ever could. When we arrived, Nolan was at the grill in jeans and an old college sweatshirt. Deanna sat on the porch, reading a gardening magazine, glasses sliding down her nose. She waved as if we'd seen her every day this year, not just during texts and occasional coffee visits. Ruth hugged her before stepping inside, a gesture that no longer felt like diplomacy. The dining table held simple things: chili, cornbread, salad, and 3 candles that dripped quietly as conversation moved. Trevor arrived late, carrying a pie. From scratch, he announced, laughing. Proof I can follow a recipe and directions? Everyone laughed, but gently. Lily passed plates, and I noticed her rings still gleamed without flash or show. Deanna complimented Ruth's earrings. Ruth asked about the flowers in her yard, and both women smiled without effort. They'd stopped competing for adjectives and started trading compliments like small currency. Honest, simple, enough. After dinner, Nolan turned off the music completely. I still like quiet meals, he said. It reminds me what that day taught us. Lily nodded, sipping tea. That silence isn't absence, she said. It's room. Trevor raised his glass. To room, then, he said. May we all keep enough of it between us to stay kind? The toast landed softly. No applause followed, and that was exactly right. We sat in shared quiet for almost a full minute, the kind that would have made Deanna fidget last year. Now she just smiled and looked around the table. This, she said, feels healthy. When dessert came, Ruth pulled a folded paper from her purse. I found this cleaning drawers, she said. It was one of the original seating charts from the wedding, edges worn and coffee-stained. You could frame this? She teased. Deanna groaned and laughed. Please don't. That was my worst map. Maybe, I said, but it led us here. The table fell silent again. Not uncomfortable, just meaningful. The kind of pause that used to scare people now connected them. Silence had turned from a weapon into glue. Later, Nolan and I stepped outside to the porch. The dog settled between us. You ever miss the noise? He asked. No, I said. I miss time, not volume. He nodded. Mom's different now, he added. She still plans everything, but it's smaller. Book clubs, neighborhood stuff. She says quiet doesn't mean invisible. That's growth, I said. She finally learned the difference between control and care. He smiled, glancing through the window at his wife and mother laughing together. I think we all did. Trevor joined us a few minutes later with 2 beers. You know, he said, I tell people that was the weirdest, best wedding I've ever been to. Weirdest? I asked. Because nobody clapped at the wrong time, he said. Best because everyone remembered it a year later. Silence tends to echo, I said, and he raised his bottle. To echoes, then. We drank to, that. No speeches, no audience, no corrections. When Ruth called for photos, we stood in the yard under string lights Nolan had hung himself. No professional camera, just a phone and genuine smiles. Deanna stood beside Ruth naturally. Lily rested her head on Nolan's shoulder. Trevor crouched next to the dog. I stood behind them, hand in my pocket. Not because I felt distant, but because I wanted to see them whole. Ruth took the picture and said, perfect, in a tone that meant complete, not flawless. Before we left, Lily handed me an envelope. For you, she said. Inside was a photo, the one the photographer had taken a second after the kiss when nobody clapped. On the back she'd written, thank you for giving us that quiet. I kept it simple. You earned it, I said. She hugged me, tighter than words. Driving home, Ruth rested her head against the window. A whole year, she said. No scandals, no drama, just life. That's the goal, I replied. Good stories end when people stop needing an audience. She smiled, eyes half closed, and start living. At a red light, I looked at that photo again. No flash, no filters, just a couple standing in light that didn't need direction. The silence of that moment had outlived applause, gossip, and pride. It had become their language, their peace, their daily proof. Some people chase grand finales, others build quiet middles that last. I'd take the middle every time. If you found this story meaningful, don't forget to like the video, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe for more true-to-life stories where dignity speaks louder than revenge.